And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tuesday Night Tune-Up, part of Arkansas Motorsports Magazine's weekly live stream show. Tonight, we're in Batesville, Arkansas at Shaw Race Cars, and we're joined tonight by Travis Mosley, Kevin Mosley, Larry Shaw, Kevin Shaw, and Heath Tate. Or Scott Mosley, I'm sorry. Anyway, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. And we're just a little late getting on the air, but we're here tonight, and we'll flip it over to Heath Tate for his weekly announcements.
We want to remind everyone about Bill Nett's benefit dinner this weekend at Elmo's
Boom Truck
Service, and also Amber Ellis down in South Arkansas,
Murfreesboro
down there for a benefit.
And like I said, we're here at Shaw Race Cars in Batesville, Arkansas, and it's a great facility here. Builds some of the very nicest and toughest modifieds anywhere in the United States. And we're joined with Larry Shaw, who is the founder here. And Larry, tell us a little bit about how Larry Shaw Race Cars got started.
Well, in the early days when I was with Mark Martin, and I got burned out there in '78, so we decided to do something different. And Ray Baker from Baker Engineering in Michigan called me, wanting me to come up there and go work for him, came manage his place for him, and we didn't want to go, but he kept on, sent us some plane tickets. So Cheryl and myself flew up there, and we talked to him, we come back home, we decided to that winter they got 88 inches of snow in January, which was more snow than we'd ever seen in our whole life. And I told Ray that I said, when spring comes, I'll be going south with him. I said, I won't be here next year. Oh, you'll be here, you'll be here. I'm gonna buy you a new Blazer, named off of that stuff. Sure enough, we decided to come back in September or August of 1979, and didn't really know what we was going to do, but a few people said you should go into building cars, doing something like that, because you've been around all your life. So I had talked to Ed Howe about doing something with him, buying some parts from him, and told him I was going to start building a race car. He didn't recommend it, but if I was going to do it, he would really like me to buy his parts. So September 10th, 1979, we started Larry Shaw Race Cars. And from there it went on. And the first few cars I built was asphalt because I had come out of that asphalt world, you know. And then somewhere around the 20th car, we built some dirt cars. And then the 35th car I built was for Don Jeter out of Woodruff, Oklahoma. He's passed away now. But he flew over here, and he called me on Friday, said he had a young man in Oklahoma he'd like to build a race car for him, go run MDRA, and his name was Buck Cadwell. He said, what are you doing Monday? So I'd like to fly over and maybe where we need to go, we'll go. So he flew over here and he had a King Air. So we go to Baker's, and we get up there, and Baker had a 430 aluminum motor there Don said, I'd like to take that back home with me. He said, I thought y'all flew up there. He said, we did, but we can take that home. So Don bought the motor, and then I was using Ed Howe's front stubs, and Herb told me he just built a new front stub, would like for me to try it sometime. So I called him, asked if he had one ready. He said, yeah, I'll ship you one out tomorrow. It's like 4:30 in the afternoon. I said, what airport's up there close to you? He said, Saginaw. I said, can you meet us there? And I asked that pilot, he said, about 45 minutes. He said, yeah. He said, I thought you was in the plane. I said, we are, we can get there. So anyway, we get the stub, and we come back and
put it in the plane.
Put it in the plane, had the motor, and we come back here. Don Jeter had told Baker, he said, how quick y'all gonna run? He said, in 2 weeks. Well, that's the first I'd heard about that. You know, we ain't got nothing, we're gonna race in 2 weeks. So we come back home, and we started, my little brother and Winfred Reed's brother, Claude Reed, we started building that car on a Tuesday morning, and the next Thursday, we leave here and go to Meekum Cobb's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He had some scales we used. He was a Firestone dealer. We're going somewhere with this in a minute. Anyway, we get off the scales. We go to a brand new racetrack. I'm just telling you, we built a car like an asphalt, everything real aerodynamic and slick. And the good Lord lined all these stars and everything up perfect for me, because we get out there, this track was just slick as glass. It was a brand new racetrack. We set quick time, won the trophy dash, and come back the next day and won the 40-lap feature. And when we left the racetrack that day, we had sold 7 cars. So I got on a payphone coming home, called Cheryl. I told her, I said, we're out of asphalt business, we're in the dirt business. And one of them cars sold too was Billy Warrior. So that's kind of how Larry Shaw Race Car took off. And then that was kind of in the early days, you know. And then what really, I guess, probably put us on the map was in '86 when we went to the Dirt Track World Championship. I think it was Moyer's birthday. It was on Sunday afternoon, the World Dirt Track Championship. And it was, I don't know where we started. It seemed like we started 21st, but Moyer won that race. And that paid $40,000, which was a whole bunch of money in '86. It's a lot now too.
Yes.
But that was a whole bunch then, and I didn't get none of it, you know. But that year we sold close to 240 cars or something. You know? So that's kind of got us where we need to go, you know. And then everything else is kind of, from there on, we just kept building off that.
And what year was it that the transition was made when Scott came in? What year was that?
About the same time that COVID hit.
Yeah, almost exactly.
I didn't know nothing. That was last July.
Yeah,
Last
July
July.
1st, 2019, when we took over.
And Scott, you came up from South Arkansas.
Yes, sir.
And before you got into the race car business, do you mind telling us, the folks at home, what you done before you got in the race car business?
Well, I worked basically in the family business. I worked for my uncle, my dad, most of my life. We manufacture printing ink. We make ink for like Coke cartons, dog food bags, industrial boxes, corrugated boxes, that type of material. Our main plant's in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So that's kind of my background. My background's in chemistry and nothing in the world to do with a modified or a dirt track or anything, you know. So kind of got involved in that kind of backhanded way.
Tell us about that.
So, my wife, we were living back home. Our parents lived right, you know, 4 miles, or real close to us. Her parents lived real close to us, and her dad was he raced dirt tracks for a long time, and he had gotten out of it, so he retired and decided to get him another dirt track car, you know, and the little Camaro. He's just gonna play around with it, and Travis was about, I don't know, 10 or 11 then, or so, 12. And so he started going and helping him and watching him and stuff, you know. I didn't go. I ain't wasting my time over there. I was too late. I get in too late, you know. So just Travis and my wife would go over there and then watch and stuff. And so one night, they asked a 12-year-old kid, "Hey, you want to drive a dirt track car?" What do you think a kid's gonna say? No.
Well, he said yes.
So, yeah, should have knew then though. The first or second night out in that car, he bent the frame on it. So I already knew then that I ought to not do it. But you know, it just kind of grew on us, and it was a way as far as you know, I like the way that the dirt track is a family-oriented sport.
Right.
You know, you get to spend time with your son, with your kids and stuff in the pits, and you know, and yell at them real bad when they mess up and those kind of things. But it was, it's just kind of grew on us, and we just kept doing it and kept doing it, and you know, it just kind of grew from there. And just a conversation with Larry or two, and then all of a sudden, you know, we're here.
You're here. And like I said, if you look around the facility here, you know, you're obviously very busy. So see a lot of construction going on.
Yeah, Kevin and the guys are doing a really good job here, keeping the orders going through. And I think for November, how many cars did we ship out in November? 5 or 6 or so?
Like about 10.
Maybe 10.
Yeah, we send about 2 a week out anyway, it seemed like.
Yeah, that's why I thought about Vegas. We sent out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had, well, last year we sent 14 out there.
Yeah.
When you first took the business over.
Right.
This year was a little bit lower than that, but a lot of that's COVID.
Yeah.
What type of staff does it take to maintain, to keep operation this size, getting these number of cars out? What type of staff do you maintain?
So we have 2 main welders. That would be John and Mitch. They do all the fabrication work in the back shop, and then Travis actually does he does our sheet metal work, and then Jason and Kevin and Travis and all of them get in and kind of assemble the cars and, you know, and help and do those things. And then, Jeff, when he's not on the road racing, he's in the shop helping as well, so, it
And you
it
forgot
takes
the boss lady.
yeah, and I forgot about Marlene. And I shouldn't forget about her because she is really important to the deal. She keeps these guys going, and it takes more than you think to keep an operation like this running and running smooth. One of the things that I liked about what Larry built here and what he built upon was it's not just about building a car. When you buy a car from us and what Larry's instilled in these guys is a service that comes with it. And you can call and talk to these guys and they'll help you, and the customer service part of this is just tremendous. And I think that's more than anything, I think that's what sets Larry Shaw or Shaw Race Cars above everybody else. I think it's our customer service.
When I was talking to Ed Howe about doing this race car business, I mean, he told me some things that I really followed. He said, Larry, when you get into the race car business and you kind of get going, and somebody's got one of your cars and they wreck and tear it up, quit building a new car, get theirs repaired and back on the track, you know. So we always kept the jig open for somebody that was wrecked. Now, if somebody wrecks on Saturday night or Sunday, if they're here Monday morning, we will put a stub on their car and have them back out that same day. But there are some people that tell people they can't get their car for a week or two. You know, we never was that way. We would always take care of it. It never was a big problem for us, but we just had that plan to do it that way.
Right.
Take care of what you got already.
So it's really it's really not an 8 to 5 job.
No, we
Sometimes
would,
you gotta put in some extra hours.
yeah, we would say to
keep
get it
the
done
customers.
every time, but,
Mhm.
but, you know, it's no big problem. They put a stub on in 5 or 6 hours. And, you know, some of them would show up here. We finally got a lot of them trained, but they show up here with a dirty race car from Saturday night, you know, and then we get out here, and we'd have to spend 3 or 4 hours getting it so we can get inside. So we let them know that up front. Still yet, there'd be somebody sneaking, oh, I forgot that the car wash didn't work or something, you know. But, yeah, sometimes we stayed late and get them out, you know.
Now, we were friends with Mosley's before they
yeah.
bought
Oh, yeah.
Scott and Travis had ran our cars in the past.
Right.
I think they had some late models and different things like that too. So we developed a friendship with them before they ever took over this operation.
Before they took over, Larry, in the 30 years that you had it, how many race cars did you build in 30 years?
5,463.
To the number, 5,400.
And nobody's even close to that.
It's a lot of race cars.
That's a lot of tubing.
A lot of tubing.
I think if you line them up, it's from here to Ball Top.
Maybe longer than that.
I think they just got from Baltimore.
We did.
They didn't run into a line of cars over you.
No. But you know, when you sit down and think about that number of cars, you're probably right, it would stretch that far. What,
Race cars. I think we're the largest automotive dealer or builder in the state of Arkansas.
That's what, yeah, that's.
Governor Husky told me that.
Yeah, he told me one time, he said, you're the largest car manufacturer we got.
What, from the time that you started building cars, and let's go from the time that you started, say to today, what's the biggest changes that y'all have seen?
Well, I'm gonna say the technology has come so far, you know, it just, back when we started, you know, you didn't need but 6 springs and 6 shocks. And the only reason you need that extra one in case you tore something up, you know what I mean? It was real simple. The shock, we had Carrera shocks and Pro shocks back then. That was only 2 companies. And they had a shock, it was a 75, 76, 77, and some of the street stock would have a 78. And then when you go to the back, you just add a 9 to it. I mean, that's all we had for shocks. And springs, they were just 1 or 2 companies that made springs, Cobra Springs, which was Ray Dillon. He sold springs, Ed Howe had springs. And really, there wasn't no more springs than that. And the biggest problem we had back then was the tire. They just had such big tires. We built that 4-wheel drive for Jerry Inman. And, you know, if we could build that car today, that car would have really been good. But back then, we built that car, it was a Corvette body we put on it. But the problem was we had 20-inch tires and no power steering. Inman would nail that thing and it would go toward the wall and then come down, and we took it to the Superdome to run inside the Superdome, NDRA show. They had a hockey game there the night before. They hauled that dirt in after around 2 o'clock, and it had snow and ice, and they couldn't get it packed just like a sponge. And Edmonds out there trying to drive that thing, hit them holes when he come down, them wheels taking over. He come in and literally his gloves were soaking wet with blood where they hit the top of the road cage, you know. And Stanley Mose told him, he said, man, said, you want to get a hold of that thing? He said, you can get a hold of it, I'm done with it. We took it to Pittsburgh, it was pretty good because it's a slick track. But here again, you know, I'm saying nowadays, 11-inch tires and power steering, that car would really been competitive. But they outlawed it right quick, so we didn't get run but 2 or 3 times. But that was on the stock car, Everton covered stock car magazine, I think in 86 or 87, I forgot when it was.
And Scott, you taking over Shaw in 2019?
Yes, sir.
You know, and for you not to be from a racing background or racing, Travis was racing. But
Yeah.
how did that really come about? For you just sit there and say one day that you're going to be build race cars?
I think in business, even though what we do is totally different as far as making ink or whatever, it's still, you're still manufacturing and you're still servicing your product. I think all that relates to what you're doing. Any business that you have, it's all about the people. The product, you got to make a consistent product and all those things. But if you don't have the right people working with you or working for you, it's not going to be successful. And so I think coming from that kind, knowing that, and you know, and from learning from what my dad and my uncle had kind of taught me through the years, and you know, and just kind of, and I'm learning a lot still. You know, Larry's helped a lot. Kevin, these guys have really been helping us. You know, as we feel our way through this. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has really it's been tough to navigate in some aspects, but it's getting better. So I think from that regard, I think all businesses all that stuff relates to what we do.
You know, race is a pretty close-knit family. You know, you go to the racetrack and you got 50 to 100 cars, but everybody's right there together, you know, and they, you know, if somebody gets hurt or something, everybody's there to support it. And people, you know, you got these people on the street say, well, I don't know why people waste money on racing. Well, they don't understand. The racers, this is the only hobby they got. The people that got boats, they go to the lake and do that. That's what they do. The people that got horses, they go to the horse shows. You know, this is what racer does. This is their hobby, and they're going to do it, you know.
You're right.
You know, you were talking about the business side of it, and I think a lot of people, that if you're not involved around the sport, you really don't understand that to survive in this type of business, you've got to be a sharp businessman.
Yeah,
I mean, and I think Larry could probably attest to it. You probably become a better businessman over the years that went right along with being a great car builder.
Right. Well, you know, you learn from your mistake. Julian Martin a long time ago told me that, he said, you learn more from your mistakes than you can from anything. And he told me when he got into the trucking business, he's up around here hauling rice hulls from Stuttgart, Arkansas to Concord. And them truck drivers going to California and charging like $800 or $900 to go out there and come back and haul produce. He said, man, I've got to get me some of that. So he went there and going to do it cheaper. He's going to do it like $600 or $700. Tore out the rear end, blow out, forgot how many tires. He said, I learned a lot. I never do that anymore, you know.
Correct.
Same thing with us. You know, people don't really realize what a hard time we had here. In 1994, we had a fire that destroyed pretty well everything we had. And I actually lost a whole bunch of my real good racers. I don't blame them because they didn't think that we could get them back on the track. This is in February, and racing's going to start in March or early. So a lot of them left me because they didn't think I could get their car done. And they're probably right, I might not have could, but man, that was a huge setback for us. It took us a few years to get over all that. The insurance company, we lost a bunch of money, but they paid us $127,000. They said I was uninsured, I didn't have enough. So I learned after that always to make sure you got replacement insurance. And you know, we had just really, we was rolling pretty good, you know. We won a lot of races and had, just a few years before that when they had to show me 100, there was 26 cars in it, and we counted, we had 21 of them, you know. So that's, and then it just, you get something good, like we built a race car out of the OMT, but we never have built no welded to race cars, you know, that was extra money, but we found out that was the best thing to use, so we've always stayed with that. And we didn't take the cheaper aluminum, we stayed with a good brand aluminum, you know, because some of it would peel off and everything, but, good products, which they're pretty well all good now, but, you know, it just, over the years, you learn a whole lot from that kind of stuff, you know.
On that same deal there, he's talking about that fire. Of course, he wasn't here when it burnt down. Me and my brother was, and they was down in Daytona, Florida, for the Speedway, it's February. But we were. You talked about the community and how everybody pulls together to support you and stuff like that, and even the racers do the same thing. While the building was on fire, we had two buildings. One was on fire, the main welding shop. The other one was our parking. We had just unreal amount of friends and volunteers just back their pickups in that truck, in that open shop that wasn't on fire, that was fixing to jump over on the roof of it, just throwing stuff in the back of their truck, getting all of our stuff out of there. I don't think we lost hardly any inventory during that fire. So that was pretty cool with all of our neighbors and friends stuff there, that kind of stuff.
On, you know, we've got two cars sitting here. They're in different stages of being built. And if y'all would, Travis, Scott, Larry, tell our viewers, you know, from like start to finish, how long is it gonna take if I call you up tomorrow and say, hey, build me a car? That way the viewers know, you know, from start to finish. I mean, there's a lot to building one of these cars.
Go ahead, Travis.
If you want to do, so like in a back shop as far as welding wise, John and Mitch can get one done in a day and a half. It's about 10 to 12 hours, depending on how much they've already got pre-cut, pre-bent. And then it goes with powder coating, and that's usually an all-day deal for them. And we'll get it back, it'll be like this car here. And if you want to get it like race ready, if that's all we focus on, and we don't try to kill ourselves, it's a week. It may take 7 days if you want to do it right, and that's ready to go to the races.
Right.
And that's not trying to include, hey, we got to work on that customer's car or this customer's car. You know, we're not focusing on one car when we get in here all the time. We're trying to get everybody's deal. I mean, you're looking at, 20 days, I'd say, would be a safe bet if you were trying to get it race ready, you know, 100% ready to go to the racetrack.
Ready to go to the racetrack.
Somewhere, you know.
Yeah. You can do them a lot quicker.
You can,
If you want to do it thoroughly and you dot all your I's, cross your T's, and do everything right, it takes you a good 2 weeks to get a car ready. We did it in 24 hours.
Yeah, it's been done. I mean,
But
But when
slinging some
you-
wrenches and stuff. That was just more than one people too. It'd be 6
Yeah.
people in a car.
But Kevin, like when you said they're taking the 2 weeks and dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's, that's the foundation of what this company was built on.
That's where you bump the front end, set the toe in, put it on the scales, and they can leave here and take their helmet and go to the racetrack, and probably sit on the pole with it.
That's what we hope. Yeah.
And plus, you get a lot of calls during the week. Tell us about the technical help that y'all provide during the week.
Well, there's about, Scott, we ain't gonna count him. He's just learning that part of it. But you've got Jason and Travis and me and Jeff and the other Travis our other Travis does a sheet metal deal. He also helps out on a lot of our tech calls sometimes too. Me and Jason primarily do most of them. The good thing about the way my dad built this business, everyone in our operation can do everybody else's jobs. So like we have a shop layout upstairs, so we rebuild shops. Well, there's about 4 or 5 of us that can go in there and replace shafts, and revalve shops. You know, two of them are very better at it than the rest of us.
Right.
But any of us can do it. Same thing with sheet metal. About any of us can do sheet metal, but Travis is by far the one that does majority of it. Yeah.
Not me, though.
No. Now, you don't want me putting on a welding helmet, by any means, because it's not going to look good. But as far as the technical aspects, I do think we have one of the best crews in the business. Not to say we couldn't improve. We're trying to do that all the time. A lot of that goes back to your notes that you give the drivers and the crews, your setup books and information like that. It helps that Travis and Jason and Jeff all race. So they're kind of keeping up with current trends or what's working now and what may not be working at all. We run into that deal where we try stuff and that ain't no good. We'll put that one on the back burner and maybe it'll come back up one of these days. But I do think we have one of the best in the business, and a lot of that goes to listening to the customer first. So when they call you and they tell you what they're encountering, you really gotta listen to them and see what they're got going on. And you gotta analyze if it's, what kind of track they're running at, and you might wanna find out what kind of driver they are, you know, or their motor combinations, tire rules. There's a lot of things you gotta find out before you can really truly diagnose the correct answer. If a guy just calls you up and says his car won't turn, he's tight or loose, whatever, I mean, there's literally 1,000 things you could tell him. But to analyze that and giving the right answer, it takes you a good amount of learning how to listen to your customer.
And that's hard whenever they don't know.
Yeah, when they call you and you say, well, what springs do you got in? They don't know. It's just the ones that come in the car. They're not doing their homework on their end before they call us. So we have to kind of spank their hand a little bit and tell them, all right, this is what you need to go back and do. And then call me back, and then we can go over this.
Yeah, if you make one change, there's 100 things it can affect. You know, if you just take every little thing on a race car, if you change it, it can affect so many different things.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do, that they've always offered, and we continue that as well, is once a year we have a school. We'll bring, you can come, we'll bring a guy in that teaches, and all these guys here, they kind of teach the guys and stuff. And we had, last year we had Dale McNeil come in. He's gonna come back again this year and do it. Well-known late model racer, and talks about setups, talks about driving abilities, and talks about different things you can try and do on your setups and things. So we try to educate as much as we can as well. And part of the education process, like Kevin says, is having those guys know what they've got, know what they're doing, so when they do call, it doesn't take an hour of Kevin's time to kind of filter through everything that you know that's taking place. And I think that's a big aspect of what needs to happen as well.
You were talking about one change affects 100 different things. Dirt track, how consistent, let's just take Baseball Motor Speedway to just back, down the road here just a little ways. How consistent is that surface every week to the setup?
It's different, but it's different.
But it's the same at every track.
Every track, you're gonna have an equation where I like to word it this way, the available grip offered up from the surface to the tire. As that grip goes away, handling goes away, because your tire no longer has the grip it had before. So you either have to do changes to the car, but most of the time, change needs to be done between the seat and steering wheel. The driver needs to adapt to that and make that change rather than you coming in and making an adjustment on the track, on the race car. Now, by all means, some race cars you'll see they're bullet fast when they're gripped, and then they're just really slow and slick. Well, they've got their setup to where it's not balanced. It's enough forgiveness in the surface that it's still fast when it's got some grip, but when that goes away, then that's no longer there. So that car's just out of balance, and that driver can't make up that in the seat. So that's when you really got to work on the race car itself.
And I was just using that dirt, not necessarily Baseball Motor Speedway, but dirt being so unpredictable from week to week. You take a night in the early spring, late fall, and you've got a warm afternoon, and then all of a sudden the sun goes down, and the moisture starts coming up. That's always something different to work with.
A few years ago, people would use soap. Now that would really throw you off. You got a pretty good racetrack, and all at once they come out and put a little water at intermission. And now you got something that you don't know you got. You get out there and it's too late to see what you got. But they kind of got to wait for that, I'm sure. But now Baseball Speedway, out there in that little valley, moisture will pull up out there at night.
A lot of places develop trends though. If they race the same racetrack, you can kind of generally, that place will develop a trend like Batesville. A lot of times it'll be fast early, but it'll slow way down. I mean, it's fast all the time, but it'll get slick there. Other than that, so you kind of know if a guy races one place, it's easier to tune.
When we first built Batesville back in 1988 and 89, it had a whole lot more bank in it. It was unreal fast. I mean, we had the wall run at first was railroad ties put about 5 foot in the ground, and we had an enduro race, and they knocked them posts off like it's toothpicks, And then
I think we
shortly,
were one of those cars.
I think so. Shortly after that, the World of Outlaws we had them out here on a Monday night, and the purse was $87,000. Now, we hadn't been in business about a year, and it was $87,000, it was on Monday night. And I think Mooney and partner with me on that deal. I said, boy, we're gonna be lucky to come out in this thing. No, it's 83,000, but we took in 87,000. But here's what the story was about that surface. Butch Ivy from Little Rock come in here, and what they did, I forgot how many cars they had, but they gave them 4 laps. They all went around and never left 4 laps. Ivy went a 1040 around this track out here. We ran the feature, and the feature was over. They had a caution with it on lap 23 with 2 laps to go, and they had run 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Less than 5 minutes, the whole feature had been over. They
That
just
was
didn't
sprint
run-
cars, right?
sprint World of Outlaws. So back then it was in the World of Outlaws tells you how they want the track. You got to keep. They want it wet and heavy, so we had to keep it wet, you know. But I walked out there at the feature, and it almost pull your shoe off, you know. It's still real heavy and packed.
Bill, that is one of the questions you said there. One of the things we ask our customers is where they race at. Because if they're racing in Ohio, Pennsylvania, or Iowa, or North Dakota, or South here, Georgia, somewhere, surfaces are different on all that. And the drivers talk to you that when they tell you it's dry slick, well, dry slick down here still has a little drip to it because we have a cleaner surface. Dry slick in Iowa, it's more of a topsoil, crumblier surface. It gets a little bit different. So the track itself has a looser condition to it. So their dry slick is a lot slicker than ours down here. So that dictates some of our changes that we talk to the drivers about.
So y'all have to keep up with the soil composition all over the United States to be able to diagnose.
There you go. There you go.
You know, over the telephone. And for the people watching home, they may not take that into consideration that the dirt that we have here in Arkansas is gonna be different somewhere, you know, in the United States, and that's totally gonna affect the balance and the setup of the car.
You go to Iowa, the topsoil there may be 20 foot deep.
But
You
it-
go
but it-
3 inches
yeah.
deep here, you're hitting rock.
But even within Arkansas, the dirt at Batesville and dirt at I-30 is different.
Yep.
The dirt at
Right.
Crowley's Ridge is different. And Murfreesboro, you know, that's got some of the oddest looking dirt, you know, and so, you know, it's track to track, even in the state of Arkansas, is different.
One of the best little racetrack that we've ever had around here before. The surface been pretty well the same all the time, and you can learn so much on it with BB. I mean, you go down there once you got into the race, the track did not change. You know, it pretty well stayed the same all night long. But it was a good little racetrack to test on.
And we're talking a little bit about the construction of the cars and everything. Does the region of the United States, talking about soil does it have anything to do going into tubing placement or anything in the cars? Have you ever played with
Well,
that?
good question there. We kind of come up with a car that's pretty forgiving to go about anywhere we go. There is certain tracks, certain parts of the country that if a guy tells us they're gonna race there, we'll add a bar to a car or take it away. If you've watched any videos from some of the tracks in Central California, those things can get pretty rough and rutted up a lot of times. So those tracks are pretty rough on equipment. And so we might put some extra bars in the car to kind of strengthen them up for areas like that. I don't think we ever take bars out. Most of everything, we've been pretty comfortable. We like the safety aspect of it. And one of the things is, under the IMCA rules, you're required to run an 1 3/4 roll cage. Under some of the other sanctioning bodies, you're allowed to go all the way down to 1.5 inches. And we could do that, but the integrity of the car is a little bit different. But the other aspect of it is, if you just build your car out 1.5 inches or something like that, you're kind of limited on your resale value of that car. If you have an 1 3/4 cage car, that car can pretty much run anywhere in the United States. So you've got a larger resale value for your customers' cars when they do get ready to sell them.
And probably talking about resale value, and people at home may not think about this, but race cars depending on manufacturer, just like the cars that you drive in normal everyday driving, some cars have better resale values than others, and you know, I think history shows that the quality and integrity that goes into the Shaw race car, it has great resale value across the United States.
You know, one of the things that I kind of get amazed sometimes is we'll have a guy call in for a tech and he's got a 2006 Shaw.
Yeah.
And he's still running a 2006 Shaw.
And you're usually winning.
And yeah, and he's, you know, or they'll call and they got a 2008 and they want to update it. I mean, you'll get calls like that a
When
lot.
you get that 2006 call, do you have to call Larry up? Do you have to phone a friend and?
Nah, if they call me, that'd be one of the early one in next week for a study.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
That's fine.
No, you're good. I mean,
Well,
that's
But
why.
we did get those calls.
We did a couple years ago, me and Jason were out of town, and we have to leave my dad in charge of the tech line. Well, it's not that we didn't have enough confidence in him. He could probably get them tighter or looser, but we get them a cheat sheet. If they call and they're loose or they tight, we gave him this whole list of stuff. Well, so somebody called and he wasn't turning very well, or it was too loose or something, so he started tightening up. And we listened to him on the phone next week, because he's still there, and he said, well, you need to do this, and this, and this, and if that ain't enough, do this, this, and this. He done gave him like 12 things to do. You know, and I'm thinking, this guy's gonna knock the wall down there.
all right, now let's go back to
And that's when we want to put a front clip on his car.
Because Larry said earlier, you make one change and it affects 100
Yeah.
days. So he's giving 12 pieces of
Yeah,
advice.
he
So
made
we got
1,200
1,200 different
Yeah,
changes.
yeah, 144 at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, he made 1,200 changes.
You must have trained Jeff Taylor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if a guy calls with a 2006 car, driver calls a 2006 car, and you update, what are we looking at as far as the amount of changes from 2006 to 2019?
It's more in the actual setups anymore. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of, we've made changes, mounting points and stuff over the years that we've improved the cars with, and we'll make some of those changes. Some of the updates are not available for the older cars. The way the layout of the cage is, you just can't change those bar links up. The older cars, for instance, the cage layout was a lot smaller. They made for small drivers, and that was fine because the window opening was all right. You could get in and out of them. But then when the full containment seats come into play several years ago, that took up a lot of cockpit room. So we had to open the cages up to allow for the full containment seats. And so, you know, a guy with an older car like that, you're not going to cut his cage off and make a bigger cage out of it. So the mounting points, shock travels is going to be a big deal that we're going to be talking about next year, because the rules just come out today with IMCA with some new shock length rules and no preloads and some different rules and stuff that's come up today. And actually before this come on, I just looked at it maybe 10 minutes ago, so I hadn't had a chance to study it. But some of those older cars, the mounting points where the shocks was at may need to be manipulated a little bit. And I say older cars, that could be even next year, or cars we just built this year or last year, to get the full benefits of what rules are being changed to.
Back in the old days, you know, late models, they really gave us a lot of stuff you could change right quick. Like when we first started running late model, the rule was the #1 spark plug had to line up with the ball joint. Okay. Warrior and myself, we built a car and we moved the motor back 2 inches. And we go to some little track, I don't know where some place, and they told us that motor was too far back. I said, no, I don't think so. He said, yeah, it's actually 2 inches back too far. I said, you sure? He said, yeah. I said, he measured it. I said, oh no, it's from the ball joint. He says from the center ball joint. I said, that's what your rule says. It said from the ball joint. So they shut that down next year. I mean, before it was over with, they kept every year, everybody kept moving stuff back. So it ended up in 6 inches setback on them. But we was in Illinois when they got on to us and told us said, no, it's 2 inches back. It's 1 3/4 to be exactly. I said, that's from the ball joint. You know, it's from the center ball joint. I said, no, that's not what it said. He said, boy, next year she'll be from the center of the ball. So back then, you know, we moved the cage and everything, kept moving everything back toward the back, you know. You could do so much more with a late model you can with the modified. Modified, you kind of stuck with what you got.
Where do you talk about the modified being, not necessarily being stuck, but what do you perceive in the future? What's the design changes you think that you'll see in the future? Because I'm sure you're already trying to stay a step ahead of the competition, doing R&D work. What do you see coming in the future, if you can and would elaborate on that? You may not want to.
You almost got to wait for the rules to go so you see what you do.
Yeah, almost like you can.
IMCA, man, they got a big posse of people watching everything. So you pretty well, I mean, you really, I don't know if you need to be sharp enough to beat them, because they're pretty smart, you know, and they watch this stuff. They got that day that text for them, whoo, you don't get nothing by him.
Yeah, he's pretty sharp cat.
You got 4 different sanctioning bodies, to be honest. You got your UMP, your USMTS, USRA, which are kind of the same, and IMCA. Okay? They're all got different rules. So you've got to build a car, like he said, resale value wise, that a guy can buy, and if he's running UMP, well, he can sell it to a guy running IMCA and not have to change the whole car. So if you try to dive, hey, I want to build a UMP car, you got to build totally different from what you build. If you're a guy that's going to run UMP, you do a lot more different stuff than if he's going to IMCA. Cage size and all that stuff. But he's kind of going to be stuck running out UMP versus running IMCA.
Talk about that
But is
guy,
that
talk about that guy who had that 2006 car. Now, when you're talking to him on the phone, there's nothing better than that car. He's not changing, he just want to update it. He said, I love this thing, it's been in the family, my son run it, and I'm running it. He said, I'm just not changing, you know, so you get them, and that's okay, but you have to talk and visit with them.
is that something that IMCA do they come to the shop?
You know, but when you go to the track, they're there.
And, I mean, and look at your car and say, hey, yeah, this will work, or
Now, I will say that Dave did come to our shop last year at the Race for Hope. We explained to him some things that we've seen with the ASCO subs that were kind of like, they didn't really bother us, they kind of bothered us. Some of the stuff they had going on, and we showed him some of the measurements and stuff and how you can manipulate it, how easy it was to manipulate some of the measurements. And
He addressed that a little bit.
he did address it. I mean, he came to the shop because we asked him to, and so they're good about listening to the chassis builders.
Right. And I think all sanctioned bodies want to do good. IMCA to me does a real good job with it. I mean, they're there to try to make the sport have some longevity about it. And you know, sometimes the rules changes not everybody likes, and you're just going to have some problems with that. Back to kind of what you was talking about there, Bill, what kind of changes is going to be going forward. I really look to, with the adapt, I guess what you say, with everybody developing the pull down rigs and things like that nowadays, where the big gains in that stuff is not so much in the actual components or even the suspension or setups that you're using. The bigger gains in that is an actual structural design of the chassis. So moving forward, I think that's where you'll see your bigger changes at, and that'll be moving a bar here or there to a different position, or possibly a different type of tubing in one place or another. My dad had mentioned that we didn't use any electric weld tubing. We've always used DOM tubing and used some moly. We've played with DOCAW as well over the years. So there's several different things that you can do there. The Rayburn cars, late models back in the 80s and 90s, actually in 94 when we had that fire, my dad called CJ up, and CJ sold us some cars to help us get us going because we couldn't get cars out to customers. So we called our customers up and say, hey, we're not going to be able to get you a car, but I can get you a Rayburn car, and Rayburn's going to sell it to me, I can still sell it for the same price. That'll work. That's what they'd say, you know, they want to stay with us. So, but the thing about Rayburn's cars, when we started building them, so CJ just told us to start building them. And when you started looking at them, he had different types of tubing in different positions on his car. He'd have seam tubing here, he'd have a piece of moly here, a piece of DOM here. So he was doing things in the 90s that were that people are thinking they're just picking up with these tie-down machines and stuff like that, which it's been going on since, you know, probably the first race car had ever been. People have been moving stuff around. Donahue, back when he was running them cars at Talladega, and they were so fast, you know, 200 miles an hour back in the early 70s, they were playing with chassis dynamics and stuff back then too. It's just coming to our sport now. It's
Right.
we're considered grassroots, and it's just developed into the mainstream now.
Is that something that Travis and
Yeah.
and Jeff do? I mean, like, you know, you're talking about future, looking down the road, what you can do to your race car, how you can make it be better. Is that something in the future that, you know, you're trying something different in your car, Jeff's trying something different, and maybe Travis Ashley tries something different, that, yeah, this is gonna work,
Yeah.
and no, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Is that something that y'all do different with y'all's cars compared to what you're actually building?
Yes, and for example, Jeff, when he built this new car, we built a cross-shaft A-frame car, which is basically a late model A-frame car, you know. Like, we're just gonna try it, you know, Jeremy's cars, they've got them, and all these, your Rage cars, we're starting to go to them, so different couple chassis brands we're going to them, so we're like, well, we're gonna try them. And he raced it 10 times, and he decided he wouldn't have something right with it. I mean, not saying it's bad, but what we had with it, the package we had wasn't working right. So he went back to our conventional A-frame. My car and his car are all Molly. They're 100% Molly. Not that that's something we'd want to do every time, but that just
We
you know,
test and see if it's gonna be better or not.
It's gonna be better.
Right. But that's what we're
definitely
getting
feels
at. You're
different.
always trying something ahead to
Yes.
make
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
stride to make.
Yeah.
But
the
with the
cars
Molly
better.
car, the construction time would be longer because the welding.
Yeah, it's a
time-
little different process. Yeah.
It's a little bit different. It's hard. It's a harder metal. I'd say it's it's not necessarily more brittle metal, but if you get it hot, it don't like a lot of heat. You know, if you can get it too hot, it will get brittle.
One thing about what you was asking there, when we do a lot of testing, and Jeff and Travis and even Ashton Wilkie, which is Jason's boy, they do a lot of that. One of the things that we try a lot of different stuff with setups. That's pretty easy. That's just changing shocks, springs, changing weight, moving things around there. But when you're talking the chassis stuff, a lot of times it may be we might make a bar bolt in or bolt out to make it to where we won't have to be taking the torch in and out and doing things like that and see if it's better. And it could be a deal where it's better in certain conditions and not in others. You take your notes, so it wasn't good here, but I can see where that would be better over at that track that we just came from a couple weeks ago. So even when you have a bad night, you learn from that too.
And your short track versus big tracks is a big
Yeah.
thing too. I mean, setup wise, I like this. Use two different options spindles in IMCA, a Pinto versus a GM spindle, and it's a whole big different thing to go into. But there's certain conditions where one night you're going to be really good with one spindle, but then you go to the next track and it just doesn't react right, you know, the same, or it just doesn't have the right feel.
Jeff is kind of our development driver here. He runs his car out of this place. He kind of funds his own operation and stuff like that. We help him out and stuff like that. But you know, one thing I like to let everybody know, they all seem to think that, you know, he is just kind of like we support and fund that car. He does that all on his own with sponsors and stuff like that. So that allows him to do some different things. And the other thing is, he ain't afraid to get the cut torch out and weld it and cut and hack on that thing if he thinks it's going to be better. And, you know, sometimes we're right in there giving him the striker to help him, and then sometimes we're taking it away from him. You know, 'cause you've done been cutting too much on this thing. But Jeff's very smart at this stuff, and so, you know, a lot of times he'll come back after he's been racing, like he's been racing out on the road for about a month now. He'll come back and we'll have a sit down and talk, and he'll tell me some things that he'd done at certain tracks that was better, and things he might have done that wasn't as good. And then we'll just take that knowledge that he gives us and use it. And what I mean by that, was it applicable at this place, but it may be applicable for my guys, say, running in New York or in North Dakota. It may not have been any good at all in Texas, but being those surfaces are different, we can kind of take that information and learn from it.
Yeah, he probably gave up some fixture wind because he was trying something.
Oh, there's no doubt, no doubt. You made a statement earlier that a lot of times the changes need to be made between the steering wheel and the driver. And I'm gonna throw an aspect in here that has really been kind of a hot topic the last several years, but how much more changes could be made between the steering wheel and the driver and everybody thinking that everything's in the shop? Did I ask that right?
Yeah, you asked.
See where I'm coming from with that?
I can tell you this right here. I've got drivers. There's different drivers out there. There's guys that I call it drive in on the right front, and then drivers that drive in more on the right rear. They don't trust the right front. Okay.
McDowell calls them, you're looking over the left side of the air cleaner, or you're looking out the right side of the air cleaner.
Yeah, that's what Dale McDowell calls it.
Yeah.
All right. both drivers can make the car get around there on the stopways, okay? The difference is the racetrack that burns right rears up because it's really abrasive and harder on that guy that drives in on the right rear, he's not gonna last very long before his right rear tire goes away. The guy that drives in straighter or on the right front, he's gonna let that right rear live a lot longer. And as a quality racer, to me, needs to be able to drive both ways, okay? There's a lot of drivers that can go both ways with that, but they're not comfortable with one or the other. I don't know of any driver, there may be one or two out there, that's comfortable with both methods. And what I mean by that, what you'll see is a guy will drive it the way he's supposed to, even though he feels uncomfortable, but he'll do it for 4 or 5 laps, and he goes to his old method again. And so, really good racers know how to make the adjustment in the seat. Make their point of entry higher, make their point of entry lower, make their pivot point earlier or later, work their feet differently with their brakes. And so I've seen guys that's been out there on the wrong gear on their race car and actually dial more front or rear brake in it to make it not chatter, like if they got too deep of gear and they need to be higher. And if you let out too much, it's going to make the car get looser. The rear tires try to decelerate so quick. And so that guy will go in there and he'll dial front brake in the car to actually free the car up a different way than what you would normally do. And they work their feet then in such a way that they don't ever let the rear tires break traction. And it's neat how you see some drivers that can take, and you would think putting front breaker in the car would make the car tighter, but they can do some things with their feet because the way the gearing is so far off that they can actually make the car turn better by putting front brake in it. And there's probably only about 4 or 5 drivers in my mind that come to mind that are just really, really good. Now, some of them go back to my dad's time frame, and one of them was Larry Phillips. Larry Phillips is probably one of the best I ever seen.
I'll agree with you.
Yeah, probably.
He's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, he could go from dirt one year and back to asphalt next year and dominate it, you know. And talking about McDowell, the young people, if they get a chance to talk to him, he is so smart, you know. Not everybody holds their hands at 10 and 2 and driving a race car. When he was running my car, we'd run those 100-lap races, he'd tell me that he'd get his elbow tucked in his side and have his hands like this so he just wouldn't get wore out, you know. Just so many things in the cockpit that he could tell people. And I think he does it, y'all.
He does. He does a real good job of that.
And there's just so much that can happen in that cockpit with a race car.
I asked that question about the shocks and between the steering wheel drivers. I talk to a lot of drivers every week during racing season, and a lot of them go, well, this week I tried so-and-so shocks, and that didn't help me any. And so this week I tried, and a week before that I was on, you know, how much of it do you think needs to be between the seat and steering wheel where a driver just needs to sit down and learn to drive what he's got? Are we losing that in this day? Because it seemed like a long time ago we learned what we had. We learned how to drive what we had, and nowadays it seems like racers that they want that instant gratification, the instant win, and we're trying too much stuff.
And a lot of times that perfect pill is not out there.
Yeah.
That you've got to.
Well, just because it works this week, it doesn't mean it's going to work next week.
Right.
You know.
I would have to say that there's more to be gained between the seat and the steering wheel than there actually is on the actual setup.
Yeah.
Or the
And
chassis.
seat time.
And
And
seat
seat
time.
time.
A guy, a perfect example of that, a guy's not going to come out here and jump in a car that's maybe, race lower divisions and all of a sudden jump in this and expect to be on the talent level as a Ricky Thornton Jr. or a Tom Berry or someone like that. And I know I'm not no good race car driver. I know I've been around it for 40 years. I'm not going to jump in the car and know I can go out there and compete with them guys. Even though I've got all the knowledge I need, I don't have the talent between the seat and steering wheel. And I know I would have to have a lot of seat time to ever get there.
Yeah, he had one, Kurt broke his arm and he decided to drive his car up at Flippin, Arkansas, rolled the thing over. Because I got on to him in the heat race. I told him, I said, we don't even have a deep enough gear, no faster you're running. So he goes out there and I told Norman, who's standing by, I said, boy, if he gets through that turn 2, he gets through turn one, we're gonna have one scene over there. Sure enough, he rolled that thing over. Cheryl's mother tore her handle off the first time he ever raced, and the only time he ever raced. She,
Now, I left the track in style of it.
yeah, he had him a full women pit crew.
So
Yeah, we left there with the thing,
So I got out of the car, put the helmet up,
And left.
changed clothes, said, all right, I'll see y'all back in shop, and I jumped in with the girls. Left.
we
And
finally,
Norman, he wanted to go with me. didn't he?
oh yeah, we finally got it back home.
But, you know, we talk about the building of these cars, we'll go back to the 2006 model, but if you set one of them that was freshly powder coated to this one, you stood back a little bit to the naked eye, somebody would know, you probably wouldn't see a lot of
You wouldn't
difference.
see much
But
difference.
inside the box, the technology y'all talked about that's coming to the sport that a lot of people don't even realize the amount of technology that goes into is miles apart. And it's all concentrated in some small boxes.
Cage layout, I mentioned that earlier because of the full containment seat. You wouldn't think that would make a change. But in our cars from about 2000 till about 2010, we had a cage that was probably around 31 inches long in between the area where the driver gets. And when we opened that up to 34, that changed the dynamics of that car a lot. We had guys get in, so these cars ain't as good as they used to be. And that's the only change we made was we moved the front cage post forward 3 or 4 inches. But the twist rate of the car is such a way now. Before, you had, you know, this is the front tire and this is the rear, and the cage was mounted here. Now this has moved out forward a little bit. It didn't transfer weight the same, the way it added to. So just moving bars around is where the technology is going to be changing. But we couldn't go back and change and go back to the older cage because the safety aspect of it, you had to be able to get a full containment seat in there. So what you start doing then is where you structurally stiffen the car up with the cage, you got to go in there and structurally make the car a little softer or more flexible in the area that it's being presented to.
Well, we got into the modified race in '94, we had a couple of race car drivers that wanted to get a car for their sons, and we built a couple of them, you know. But then, it seemed like everybody in the world wanted to build a late model, have late model, but nobody wanted to mess with the modified. So Kevin, myself, and us around here, we looked it all over, and said, we need to start building these modified. So that's how we kind of got into the modified business, just because it seemed like nobody wanted to build it, so we thought it was a good market, so we jumped into it.
Heath mentioned something there a while ago about the sport and or where it's going and stuff like that, or it might have been Bill. One of the things that I'd like to see moving forward in our sport is to get an economical division so we can get new people in the sport.
We've discussed that a million times on how, I mean, and y'all know, you're up here all the time and he's up here and, you know, street stock racing is, I mean, it's gone.
You need the entry level racers. And here's why you need them, because you get the grandmas and grandpas come to watch their kid.
Right.
You know, if one of these hot shoes comes in town, maybe not the real good hot shoe, but just a mediocre late model racer, he'll come in and have one pit crew in himself.
Right.
He's not bringing nobody to
Right.
the show.
Right.
But this entry level racer, with the street stock stuff, they'll bring everybody in the community
You've gotta
with them.
have those people
We gotta
that
have
come
them,
in
you gotta have them keep it going.
to keep it going.
You know, and with it, I'll go back to 1983 when I started racing, and you know, and like I said, there was actually classes that was fairly economical to get into, and I was still in high school and racing, but take a young kid that gets out of high school now, the cost of the sport is such extreme, he can't even think
Can't
about
do it.
going out and
Can't even
racing
think about even
Friday
buying the
and
trailer
Saturday.
to put the
Yeah.
car on.
That stimulus money's not even happening.
And so what do we do? What do we do to get, and we have to have them, younger people involved in the
Yeah, I
sport.
agree.
Scott, what do we do?
I'm not sure what the answer is, to be honest with you. You know, it's getting harder anymore in the junkyards to find good old Camaros
It
or
is.
Monte Carlos and things of that nature. I don't know if a B mod class, you know, would be a good entry level. I mean, that's a little bit, maybe a little bit more than what you'd want, but for what you see out there, that may be one of the cheaper ways to do that.
The B mod class, the E mod class, they
Right.
had one of them where it's just, basically a stock motor and a modified,
Right.
You know,
I know.
what I like about that is if you had a real controlled, economical, I don't necessarily mean B-mod because the engines and those things are so extravagant.
Yeah.
But if you had a really restricted E-mod class, it gives a young guy the basic start, even if it's a 2006, and we refer to
Right.
that, but it gives him some understanding of how modified works. And it gives him something to work on and build up to where he can come to
Well,
Shaw Race
so-
Cars and buy a good modified later on.
Some of the problem, and it's not a knock to the promoters, because they're catering to what they have. But I'll take, just like factory stocks or whatever, they'll start, okay, what's a decent entry level class? We can agree. But then they'll start paying 10,000 or 15,000 to win these races. Well, that's gonna bring everybody, then they're gonna spend 20,000 on motors just to
Right.
be able to win this class. So then
You're,
it
I mean,
drives-
you're exactly
it
right.
drives all-
It's the same way with the street stocks, I can remember back, and it ain't been that long ago, 10, 15 years ago, you could go out here and race them.
Yeah.
But now,
Yeah.
it's
Back in the-
$30,000
back
for an
in- back
engine,
in-
it's
back in the-
25,000 for a roller.
Back in the late eighties, when Crawford County put 10,000 win, Ken Esther won it, that's where it all started, they all felt like it should go. Trent over Paragould, he runs what they call an enduro class, and he has 40 of them.
Oh,
He
every-
don't pay them hardly
every
nothing,
night.
every night. So, them kids are getting a lot of experience, and after a while, they'll move up, so.
If they
he-
win like a certain amount of races in a year, he automatically makes them move up.
Makes them move
So
up.
you gotta do something like that, don't let the guys that drive modifieds every week come down and race your races. Don't pay them 10,000 because then you're gonna have them guys come down there. If it's gonna be a beginner, entry level sport, keep it that way.
But
There's
back,
class wise.
back to what we're talking about, I do think that's what our sport needs right now, is something to get new people in it.
Right.
All these changes we make every year, we're just basically bringing the same people back in. We just changed the car, painted a different color, and
Right.
put a different shock on it or whatever. We really didn't do anything to encourage a new group coming in. And like you said, a lot of that's the cost. How can you afford to get the extra?
I know we'll probably get close to, I can look at Aaron over here, he's nodding at us, but
We're gonna go a few more.
But
You wanna go to
I
break?
wanna, before we got off, Joe, I wanted to get in on one other thing for, and I know you was too, kind of talk to y'all about not just, yes, I know we're racing INC stuff modified, but y'all are also going into the stock car business.
Yeah.
INC stock cars are gonna be coming out of Shaw. So, fill us in on that just a little
Well,
bit.
you know,
for the viewers
so,
out here.
with what Mooney's doing with Batesville and putting it, and I-30 is done with their, bringing that class in. So it's put a lot of attention on that. Where we're at, it was gonna be really difficult for us to produce a lot of those cars, just because of the business we have in making modifieds. So we made the decision to partner with a guy in Wisconsin. John, I can't remember his
I
last
can't
name.
pronounce his last name.
Pronounce his last name, but the Sniper Speed chassis. And so we're basically gonna be a dealer for him. He's gonna produce the cars for us, and then we're gonna sell them and be his dealer in the South, and we'll be able to fix them or repair them or any of those things. To try to support that class, and hopefully it'll build up.
That could pull some of them young people in you're talking about too.
It may pull some, but the unfortunate thing about that class is it's been around a long time. I-Stocks or the I-Stocks for IMCA in Iowa and other places is huge. And so the cars are not entry-level prices. You know, they are a little bit more expensive than what from an entry level standpoint is. But I think if you ever been to Boone to the Summer Nationals, Super Nationals they have up there, that's some of the best racing you see all week with that class of cars. And at I-30 they put on a good show with those cars, and I think it'll be some good racing with those.
And it's a car they can have around for years, it's like it's not outdated.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's an important thing too, because we've all seen over the years in racing, you know, one day, you know, something's good, and then the next thing you know, they change the rules or something, and you're sitting there with something
Right.
that you've got a lot of money invested in, and either you can't use it or you have a hard time, you know, passing it off down the road. So, you know, that certainly has got its advantages there.
I like that class coming in for a couple of reasons. One, it's a new class, and it's going to be growing. But plus, it gives these guys in Arkansas, it's been kind of limited. The modified guys that go up and play in Iowa and the Super Nationals and stuff. Now the stock car guys have an opportunity, if they want to go travel and different places and be competitive, have the same type of car, the same rule packages and everything else on a national level. So I think that'll be something that they'll like.
And I know those cars are big up north, and even down Texas, they're
Yes.
big. But they skipped Arkansas and went south. And they're big, you know, Arizona,
Oh, yeah.
you know, California, and of course, the Duel in the Desert, there was, I don't know how many there was a bunch of them that showed up there. But, you know, and we're hoping because, you know, Arkansas, that's another class that can be here to race, but do y'all see that being something that's going to, you know, I know we got Batesville, we got I-30. Is that something that's going to keep building here in Arkansas, or
I think it's got an opportunity to build, if we can keep the rules and keep the rules regulators, keeping a tight rein on those. That's kind of what got old with the old stock cars, that we let too much stuff go.
Right.
And this guy let it go one week, next week, and then next week you got 3 other guys that's doing it, and the next thing you know, well, okay, they're all doing it, we'll just go ahead and let it go. I think they're gonna have to get strict with their rules, and whoever that tech guy is.
Yeah, strict techie.
They're gonna have they're gonna go.
If they don't do that, there's not gonna be no changes at all. It's gonna have to be strict if they're gonna make it grow. But it's got the opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ask for, is the opportunity.
Back on the modified real quick before we close out, and we talked about this on the way up. The crate engine. What is it about the crate engine that seems to work so well with the modifieds versus the open engines?
You've got this much tire, you don't need 900 horsepower to stick that. And guys try to use it, and a lot of guys can't use it. You're gonna there's four things at the racetrack every time you get on the racetrack, and that's the tires. There's only so much grip that those tires will handle, and that's just.
And the actual rules packages kind of give you an advantage with it. So like if you have an open motor, and even if you build it the same weight, and lighten it up and get everything so they're comparable in weight and stuff like that, you still got a set of steel heads up high versus aluminum heads on the crate motor. You've got also with that, now the nose of the car is a little bit lighter. Let's say even if they are comparable in weight, you get a 2-inch spoiler on the back that the open motor don't. So my dad always told me you always want to get as many positives as you can, and with anything you work with on these rules or whatever, get as many positives as you can. And there's just more positives with that crate engine that gives it more of an advantage.
General Motors got with somebody to cam that motor right. That cam's got a whole lot to do with that whole
That's
thing.
what we've always said, that was just perfect for.
It's just smooth.
And the 6400 chip rule makes that motor want to live a long time. And so racers aren't buying a new motor every year or getting one rebuilt every year. That thing, I know a guy that's got like 4 years on his right now.
And I ask that question because we get asked that question all the time. You know, how does that crate engine outrun open? Because everybody just thinks horsepower.
I'm telling you, there's nobody can really answer that, you know. I mean,
You really
they're just, I don't know what the combination is, but I know that you can pull out there at the 430 Gertie and not even be in the ballpark.
It's all about how it drives on and off the throttle. You
Who
know,
come
it's
out
the
here?
corner entry,
Yeah.
and
When, I think one year out here, they had all crate motors except one, and I think they left that car.
Well, I put it in good perspective. Jeff Taylor has probably got more laps out here than anybody, and in the modified, about one of the, he's gonna be pretty tough out here about anything. And he went to his open motor out here, trying some different combinations to outrun them, and he wasn't even a top 5 car with that open motor in. He put his crate motor in, and he immediately going out there and start winning races again. It's just, there's just so much, and they go back to that seat, between the seat and steering wheel there, Bill. There's just so much you can do in here, and you can't overcome that motor combination.
racing wise, at bigger tracks, to me, the racing's not as good with the crate, if everybody's on the crate, because everybody's a lot more even. You know, like you said, there's only so much you can do driving wise to overcome the guy in front of you, and if you're running close to the same speed, you're just hard to pass.
I think it's also, I think the crate motors has also made the drivers drive over their head more,
Yeah.
because if they check up, they ain't got enough to grunt to drive around, so they gotta stay on the throttle, and means they're gonna drive over their head. Some guys are more comfortable doing that than others, so you see more wrecks like that.
Right.
It's about like it's COVID-19, they just can't figure it out. I don't know what the difference is in that crate motor either.
Well, as we get ready to wrap up this week's show, obviously, if people want to call in and buy a race car or need technical information, you get a hold of Kevin and maybe Larry if he's in the building, and Travis, and if you need help with the business side of your racing operation, Scott's
No,
got a call.
I need to clarify this point here. So Marlene, my wife, she spends as much time here as anybody. She's here, she opens up at 7:30 every morning, and she's here usually till they close the door up.
A very integral
So,
part of the operation.
Yeah, she is very integral part of the operation. She makes sure Kevin and them don't spend too much money, you know, and so, you know, that's important when we're doing this. So, no, it's just, so when you call in, you're most time I'm talking to Marlene. And
So she'll help you with the
she'll
business
help
side
you
of
with
the
that.
sport?
She's even sold some cars, so she'll do anything.
She
so.
can answer some tech questions because she hears them all day long. It's kind of like that lady who used to work for Don Miller in St. Louis. We used to buy Goodyear tires up there. And we'd call up there and ask her if she knows anything about tires. She said, all I know, they're a pain in the butt and you have a flat. That's about the way this some of the questions get.
Well, guys, we appreciate y'all inviting us here to Shaw Race Cars tonight here in Batesville, Arkansas. Like I said, if you're in the market for a modified or an IMCA stock car, please give these gentlemen here a call. And we want to thank our sponsors, obviously Shaw Race Cars. We want to thank True Grit Auctions down in Dardanelle, Arkansas. Weston Petroleum in Plummerville, Arkansas, and Prescott Raceway down in Prescott, Arkansas. And Heath, tell us a little bit about where we're going next week.
Next week, we'll be going to Pine Bluff, Arkansas to the Wildman Racetrack, where it's just mud racing. It's mud drag racing. We went there
Back in August.
and we had a blast. And we'll be down there talking with the Huntleys.
Mm-hmm.
And
Some of their drivers.
some of their drivers also will be there. So we'll be down there talking with them this next Tuesday. So y'all join in and listen to that. It's a hoot, and it's just something that everybody needs to go see at least one time.
That's true. And before we get out of Batesville, Arkansas, we got to thank our production engineer, Aaron Gilkey. Although he suffered a few technical difficulties at the beginning, he had a fumble and recovered, and we got back on the air.
He did good, yeah.
And if it wasn't for Aaron, as we say every week, the show wouldn't exist. But anyway, I'm Bill Gilkey. For Travis Mosley, Scott Mosley, Larry Shaw, and Kevin Shaw, and our co-host Heath Tate. So long, everybody, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday night.